choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
60 years ago, my father, President John F. Kennedy, announced his moonshot, declaring that America would send a man to the moon within a decade.
We meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance.
If my generation wants a better world, then we need to build it ourselves. That's what President Kennedy believed, and that's what powered his moonshot.
It was a bold vision and a leap of faith. No one knew if it was possible. But my father believed that great challenges are great opportunities, and that together we could reach the stars.
Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Today, his powerful words still resonate. They've become the inspiration for the Earthshot Prize as we take on the most urgent challenge we face: repairing and restoring our planet within the decade. The impossible is possible.
Please welcome Rachel Floor, Executive Director of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation.
Good evening, everyone. There we go. I know it's a hearty crew because you guys made it out here in this tundra on Columbia Point in January. So thank you. And welcome to the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and to the second Earthshot Innovation Challenge ceremony. We've been looking forward to this night for a long time, and we're so excited to have all of you here with us for a celebration of bold vision, innovation, and hope for the future. This is the Northeast edition of the Earthshot Innovation Challenge, a program to nurture and grow the seeds that were planted here in Boston in 2022 when their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales, came to Boston to present the second ever Global Earthshot Prizes. It's worth taking a quick moment to recap how we got here. Back in 2020, Prince William launched the Earthshot Prize as a 10-year campaign to find and support paradigm-shifting solutions to repair and regenerate the planet. The prize took inspiration from President Kennedy's moonshot speech and called on people all over the world to bring bold vision, creativity, technology, and innovation to a daunting existential global challenge. The most promising solutions would each receive £1 million to scale their impact. We were immediately moved and inspired by the clear connection Prince William had drawn between President Kennedy's moonshot and the greatest challenge of our own time. President Kennedy called on Americans to think boldly about the future and commit to reaching an audacious goal by throwing out old playbooks and trying new things. Now Prince William was challenging the global community to do just that. We reached out to Kensington Palace to ask how we could help, and Prince William and his team welcomed us to the movement with open arms. Ambassador Caroline Kennedy invited the Prince to host the 2022 Earthshot Prize here in Boston, President Kennedy's hometown, and the rest, as they say, is history. But here at the Kennedy Library Foundation, to paraphrase William Faulkner, the past is never over, it isn't even the past. All of us at the foundation work every day to connect President Kennedy's world with the one we inhabit today, because we know that history is a dynamic roadmap for the future, a living text that can help us make sense of the present. When the Earthshot Prize came to Boston, we wanted to make sure that it too would be a dynamic roadmap for the future, not just a notable occasion in the city's long and storied past. The Earthshot Prize host committee and Mayor Wu and her team worked tirelessly with us to ensure that the legacy of the Boston Earthshot Prize would itself be a scalable solution, an ongoing commitment to the finding and supporting climate and environmental innovations right here in the Northeast United States. The Earthshot Innovation Challenge, which we celebrate tonight, is the centerpiece of that living legacy. We're now in year 5 of our partnership with the Earthshot Prize, and we're so grateful to Jason Knopf and the Earthshot Prize team for their support and collaboration as we work to extend and grow the impact of that very memorable day in 2022. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to remember one of the greatest champions of our Earthshot partnership, President Kennedy's granddaughter and JFK Library Foundation board member, Tatiana Schlossberg, who passed away last month. The world knew Tatiana as a gifted journalist who worked tirelessly to help us understand the challenges facing our planet and the opportunities and responsibilities we all have to heal it. Here at the library, she was our friend, colleague, and North Star. On some of your chairs tonight, you will find a book of her selected works. May we honor her legacy by sharing her stories and asking what we can do for this planet we all call home. We are here tonight because of the leadership and commitment of an entire community, and I want to take just a few minutes to thank a few of the organizations and people who have done so much to make this night possible. First and foremost, thank you to the Kennedy Library Board of Directors and Board of Advisors for your support of this program and for your unwavering commitment to this institution every day of the year. And thank you to Alan Price and his team at the library and the JFK Library Foundation team that worked so hard to bring this program to life. We would not be here tonight without our Earthshot legacy partners, Sandy and Paul Edgerly, Karen and Rob Hale, and Wick Grausbeck and Amelia Fazzolari, who saw the potential in this bold idea early on and stepped up to transform it into a reality. Their vision, generosity, and leadership make it possible for us to find and support the incredible innovations you'll hear about tonight, and we are deeply grateful for their partnership. The Quinn Impact Fund has also provided critical support for this program from the very beginning. We're thrilled to have the Quinn Impact Fund co-chair, Kanak Kunachala, with us this evening. Tonight's program is presented as part of our Kennedy Library Forum series, and I want to thank the generous underwriters who make our forums possible. Lead sponsors, Bank of America and the Lowell Institute, as well as the Mass Cultural Council. We also thank EY, National Grid, and the Stone Foundation for their support of tonight's program. All of the Innovation Challenge finalists participated in a structured pitch session led by Mass Challenge as part of the selection process, and I want to thank the Mass Challenge team for helping our finalists to tell their stories with power and precision. I also want to thank the Salata Institute, which has been invaluable throughout our partnership throughout the development of the Earthshot Innovation Challenge. I extend particular thanks to individuals who generously gave their time and expertise through the evaluation and selection process, including Harvard graduates, our expert panel, and the final selection committee. The Boston British Consulate, now led by Consul General David Clay, has been a key partner from the first moment we learned that Boston would host the 2022 Earthshot Prize. And Foundation board member David Weinstein has spearheaded a writing contest for young people inspired by the Earthshot Prize through his organization, Write the World. I want to thank David and invite everyone to check out the virtual program for tonight's ceremony, where we've published several of the standout submissions from the contest. And finally, a huge thank you to the incredible panel you're going to hear from shortly. Patagonia CEO Ryan Gellert, former White House climate advisor and EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy, and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist David Abel. Thank you for being here with us tonight to honor the winning innovators and to lead us in what I know will be a fascinating and important conversation about the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Now it is my honor to introduce one of the distinguished trustees of the Earthshot Prize, Dr. M. Sanjan, a distinguished professor of practice at Arizona State University and the former CEO of Conservation International. Please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here and see some friends I haven't seen for a while. Gina, I think I saw Glenn over there, Glenn Prickett over there. Hey, good to see you. Look, a decade ago, Prince William brought together a group of advisors to really ask a question, how should he focus his considerable energy and his very limited time on a cause that was close to his heart and very much in his DNA, protecting nature. As I recall, that early meeting focused around three things that he really emphasized to all of us. First, he wanted to embrace optimism and human ingenuity. Second, he wanted his efforts to be truly global. And third, he insisted on achieving speed and impact, and scale. That was always part of what he wanted to do. So, as Rachel said, in 2020, he established the Earthshot Prize, inspired, of course, by President John F. Kennedy's Race to the Moon challenge. Now, the prize was launched in London, but the very first time it left London, where did it come? It came here, quite literally to this building, and to the city of Boston. And from there, it has gone to Singapore and to South Africa, Cape Town, and most recently, we were in Rio to celebrate the Earthshot Prize at the 5-year mark. Now, the Earthshot Prize, as you've heard, draws its inspiration from President Kennedy's moonshot. But in my view, there is one crucial distinction, one lesson that I think we must embrace. We've not been back to the moon since when? Anyone know? 72, right? If Artemis gets off the ground, maybe in 2028 or something like that, it's a long time for that moonshot to hang out there. Today, we are morally obligated to demand action for our planet. Our economy, our businesses, they need investments that are about sustainability and building businesses for the future and resilience if we are going to remain globally competitive. And the chemistry of our planet and the very laws of physics will hold us unflinchingly accountable. There's no escaping that. We simply cannot afford a half-a-century pause in the race to save our planet. Our recognition of breakthroughs and innovations must be secured and sustained, which is exactly what the Earthshot Challenge that you're hearing about tonight is all about. It's localizing a global ambition, sustaining it, and making it real, making it concrete for real people in real places. That's what we need. The way I see it, the Earthshot Prize is not just a recognition of ingenuity, but it's also an invitation to all of us to participate, to make our mark in what is without a doubt the greatest test, and as Caroline Kennedy put it, also perhaps an opportunity, right? An opportunity for the greatest challenge facing humanity. I want to thank the Quinn House, Sandy and Paul Edgerly, of course, Wick and Amelia, Karen and Rob Hale for helping us along this journey, really from the beginning. And of course, to Rachel Floor and the amazing team at the John F. Kennedy Library for hosting this amazing event. So with that, I'd love to invite the co-chair of the Quinn Impact Fund, and I'm going to pronounce it the Asian way, Kanna Kunchala, please.
Sunjan and I talked about Indian and Asian pronunciations of my name. I'm honored to be here tonight, but I'm representing a bunch of other people. The other board members of the Quinn House, the Quinn Impact Fund with me, Sandy and Paul Edgerly, Linda Whitlock, who I know many of you know, Matthias Keem, and our executive director, Michelle Perez-Vichot, who is going to be mortified, but I want her to raise her hand, because I know we have over 100 Quinn members here, and I will tell you one thing. Anything good in the last year and a half that the foundation has done has been because of Michelle. Anything bad is because of me. I will say a little bit about the Quinn Impact Fund. In these handful of years since the Quinn was founded, the Impact Fund has donated just over $4 million to 150 local programs across 6 pillars. The local is really important to us because the idea is to support programs in and around Boston so that our members can engage directly with the causes that are important to them. One key to being able to find those programs, though, I mean, we're a pretty new foundation, has been to curate a short list of key partners, groups that are rooted in and care about our community. The JFK Library has been one of those key partners. And our work around the Earth 360 pillar would not have been possible without this partnership of shared values with the library and with Earthshot. Our 3 finalists, Mothership Materials, Polygon Systems, and SXD, rose to the very top of an outstanding field of 70 applicants, we received this year from across academia, the nonprofit world, and industry. What stood out again and again to us, though, was that these ideas not only advance environmental sustainability, but they also deliver real social impact, like creating jobs, improving working conditions in manufacturing. Every applicant went through a rigorous review process, and we want to thank the many people who made that possible. We're grateful to the graduate students from Harvard University's Salata Institute for Climate and Sustainability. They conducted the initial application process. Yeoman's work, by the way. In this process, anybody who's gone through things like this, you have to go through the 70. Those grad students they did a ton of the initial work that got us here. We had an outstanding panel of expert judges, leaders in education, the environment, entrepreneurship, and climate justice, who evaluated the strongest submissions. They advanced the top solutions. Those top teams then pitched their innovations live to members of the Quinn House, which was a real honor for us. And to our final selection committee includes Earthshot Legacy partners, my friend Sandy, Karen Hale, and Amelia Fazzolari, along with George Sarah-Nicolau, who I hope is here because I've been practicing that all day. He's the executive director of Harvard's Salata Institute, and they were advised by the Earthshot Prize's executive director of Prize and Portfolio, Rachel Moriarty. We're so proud to be celebrating the 3 chosen finalists tonight: Mothership Materials, which is transforming agricultural waste into feedstocks that power the fabrics, foods, and fuels of our future; Polygon Systems, who is developing the world's first filter systems to combat global microplastic pollution in water; and SXD, who is using patented AI technology to eliminate material waste. Now, the good news is each of tonight's finalists is remarkable, and they're already a winner, and that's because every one of them will be recognized through a prize tonight. First prize will be $100,000, and $25,000 will be awarded to each of our other honorees, a total investment of $150,000 to support innovative climate solutions across the region. And really excitingly, all 3 finalists were formally nominated for the Global Earthshot Prize. So with that, I'm delighted to invite our finalists to introduce themselves with this video, beginning with some remarks from Prince William. Thank you.
The urgency needed to save the planet is ever accelerating, while the time we have to make meaningful changes is ebbing away. But just as President John F. Kennedy had faith that humankind could put a man on the moon, I have the same faith today that we can repair and regenerate our planet in this critical decade. From moonshot to earthshot, the seemingly unsolvable can be solved.
I'm the granddaughter of immigrants, and they taught me that doing the very hardest things in pursuit of a healthier, more equitable, and more just world for all people was an honor and was a privilege. We now have the technology and the science and the microbes and the understanding of how molecules work that we could power our entire material world. Adhesives, textiles, tires on our car from plant-based sources instead of petroleum-based sources. We figured out how to take in large volumes of food and agricultural waste and then turn that into these bio-based inputs so that we could realize this new material future. We can improve our planetary health. We can improve our human health. We can actually create more equitable distribution of the wealth that it will create to all communities. If you were to ask my co-founder and the woman who created this technology, Dr. Agnes Ostafin, she would tell you that it took a career. It took a lifetime. Because this uses physics and not chemistry, we aren't constrained by a lot of things that we're told we have to do. We can create something that we've never seen before, right? We can create something that is radically transformative. Our technology works like a giant molecular coin sorter, where we bring in any food or agricultural waste into the top. Each molecule just exits out of its own trapdoor. So we can get one thing in, we can get up to 5 things out, and the cellulose finds their bucket, and the sugars find their bucket, and the lipids find their bucket. And all of a sudden, we've taken one cost and climate liability in, as an input, and we've created 5 biomanufacturing feedstock outputs that can then be sold at a lower cost, localized to home, to then power biomanufacturing. When President Kennedy talked about going to the moon, he understood that you don't get there by asking everyone to build their own rocket. That message was really profound because he understood that when you bring together an ecosystem of brilliant people that can see a future that most people can't see yet and commit to seeing that through, that is when impossible things become inevitable.
My background is as an architectural designer originally, as is Edian's as well. And we wanted to see, can we apply design to address issues in waste management?
At Polygon, what we're trying to develop is a filter media that can capture microplastic from waterways. Microplastics are the smaller plastic particles that are less than 5 millimeters in diameter. And at this scale, they're almost invisible to the naked eye.
And the reason we're concerned with them is twofold. One, they're everywhere. We're finding them in every single one of our oceans and terrestrial lakes, almost all of our river sources, almost all our drinking water sources. And lastly, they're now found to be depositing in our human bodily tissues. We actually found that there was a specific aquatic plant that was accidentally capturing loads of microplastics from water. It was a species of water hyacinth. And we found that on its plant roots that was sitting in the water, they were made of this very special gel that was very hydrophobic, slightly porous, and that actually had really good affinity with microplastics. So any small plastic that was passing near it passively stuck to those roots.
So we're thinking about using the form of this aquatic plant root as an innovation base for our new filter. So when two hydrophobic items met in the water, they tend to adhere to each other. We can reuse the filter media in the same water channel. And through this repetitive process, we're able to capture a huge amount of microplastics.
We're developing 2 different systems based around our core filter media. So we're making ones for a municipal scale. So this is for like big water treatment facilities. The other system, which is the one with that sort of cylinder system that we were developing, is our poly cartridge system. And that's the world's first inline system to remove microplastics. So you literally can just place a pipe on one end on the inflow, pipe on the other end on the outflow, and any plastics in that water will pass through our filter media cartridge, will be captured, and clean water comes out the other end. So it's a very simple system. JFK, when he was planning on getting the US to the moon during the sort of great space race, he announced that, we're not trying to go to the moon because it's something easy to do. It's actually, we're doing it because it's difficult. And microplastics is very much the same thing for us. So we see it as it's a global problem.
We want to use design systems to advance the city and make everyone live in a better environment.
And if we all work together, we can actually address this problem. And I truly believe that.
I grew up in a 70 square foot home in China with my parents. It was so small that we could only fit one table or one bed at a time, not both. So I would have to rearrange furniture with my parents throughout the day to make things work. And it really taught me how to really respect the limited resources that we have, but get really creative about what you can do with it. When I first started learning about how people are creating garments or other products today, it was just crazy to me that we leave so much of that resource on the table or thrown away. We're solving the waste problem, and we solve it from the very beginning by designing out waste from the design stage, from the very first cut of the material. So for example, for the clothes that we wear, up to 30, sometimes even 60% of the material or the fabric is cut out just from the design process on its own. And we've been designing clothes the same way for a very long time. What we do at SXE is we flip the process, and we call it material first process. What we do is instead of cutting directly into the material and then assembling it into a 3D product, we actually start by saying, what is the final 3D product that you have in mind? And then we map backwards onto the 2D material. For SXD, we really want to become the standard for design. We got calls from several automakers who said, we think we can use your technology to help the automotive industry. They told me that they literally waste billions of dollars worth of material every year across not only fabric, but also things like vinyl, vegan leather, also sheet metal. We're all coming together and trying to solve for this impossible problem. To be able to do that right, we need to really just go for the moonshot ideas and not be afraid to rethink fundamentally some of the ways that we've been working until now. And really that is the core of SXD, and we feel like we're creating a new standard that fundamentally shifts people's mindset, that's also scalable across the board, that can actually shift the way that we design and move the needle towards sustainability.
Thank you, because we join us together in celebrating these three incredible climate innovators. I have an envelope. Promised my wife I wouldn't pull a Warren Beatty. I am truly inspired by all of them. We are so proud to be supporting them all with grants to scale their solutions. Now I am delighted to announce the winner of the Earthshot Innovation Challenge and the $100,000 first place prize to accelerate their impact. SXD.
Good evening, everyone. Now, as I walked up here, you might have thought to yourself, that fellow doesn't look like a Shelley, looks more like a James. And you'd be right. Our amazing founder and CEO, Shelley Xu, couldn't make it this evening, but as lead engineer, I'm honored to accept this award on her behalf and on behalf of the team at SXD. Now, boy, am I glad I'm up here giving a speech, because I was told by Shelley, in no uncertain terms, if we don't win, don't bother coming back. And as I'm sure you can all relate, it's nice being able to go back home. Speaking of which, what is home to you? Maybe it's a cozy apartment in a bustling city, or a nice two-story in quiet suburbia. Yet I think we can all agree that at the end of the day, there's a definition of home that transcends all boundaries, whether it's nationality, race, age, gender, or wealth. Home is this planet, that pale blue dot floating through the void, suspended on a sunbeam. Yet, despite its incredible bounty, this Earth that we call home is, unfortunately, limited in its resources. This understanding drives our pursuit of creativity under constraint at SXD. In industries like fashion, people have traditionally started with design, of course. Now, the design might be a gorgeous idea on paper, but it doesn't account for the fabric and resources required to bring it to life. That's why we've been cutting up fabric the same way for centuries and wasting so much of it in the process. Fabric, a material that requires so much land, energy, and water to shape it to our will, should never be left on the cutting room floor or left to rot in a landfill. Instead, it should be made into beautiful things that respect every inch of the material. At SXD, we start by acknowledging the materials we have, and then we create zero-waste designs that maximize output under resource constraints. These designs are then scaled through our proprietary AI platform to extend to different sizes, fabric types, and styles, all while minimizing waste, not to mention yielding 80% lower emissions and using only about half the material. Beyond fashion, we're also expanding the concept of zero waste to automotive parts and are currently working with one of the largest automotive parts manufacturers in the world. This leads to better material savings, cost savings, and simply put, a little less stress on our planet. As I stand here, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude on behalf of the team at SXD to the founders and partners behind the Earthshot Prize, of course, the JFK Library Foundation and the Quinn Impact Fund for providing a bold avenue for pushing sustainability forwards in an era where it feels like we need it the most. I'd also like to give a shout out to Universal Music Group in light of their recent announcement that SXD is working with them to convert tour merchandise to zero-waste versions, starting with the incredibly gifted Billie Eilish. We view this partnership as a major step towards broadening awareness around our mission and achieving real impact at scale. To close, I'd like to echo one of my favorite quotes from JFK, but maybe with a slight twist. Ask not what your planet can do for you, yet instead, ask what you can do for your planet, that pale blue dot that we all call home. Thank you.
Please join me in congratulating all of our finalists tonight. And can we bring up Joe and Nathaniel and Gideon, as well as Sanjin and Kanaf for one more picture. All right, and now with that big helping of inspiration to fuel us, we have an incredible opportunity to talk about what the future holds and how we can shape it. How lucky are we tonight to have some of the most creative, thoughtful, and dedicated climate and environmental leaders of our time here with us, and it's my pleasure to introduce them. Ryan Geller is the CEO of Patagonia, a company that has put sustainability at the center of its business and brand identity since its founding. Ryan has overseen the effort to ensure that Patagonia's values and purpose are expressed in its business model, including an annual dividend that is distributed expressly for the protection of the natural environment. Ryan has been at the helm of Patagonia since 2022, and before that spent 6 years building the company overseas. Gina McCarthy is a former US EPA administrator and was the first ever White House National Climate Advisor. As the head of the Climate Policy Office under President Biden, Gina led an unprecedented range of climate initiatives that restored US climate leadership on the global stage and put within reach an ambitious national target to cut greenhouse gas emissions. She's currently the managing co-chair of America is All In, the most expansive coalition of leaders ever assembled in support of climate action in the United States. The ambitious goals of America All In coalition includes cutting emissions and eventually reaching net zero emissions in accordance with the Paris Agreement. And moderating our conversation tonight is David Abel, an award-winning reporter and documentary filmmaker who spent 25 years writing for the Boston Globe and is now a professor of the practice at Boston University. David's work has won more awards than I can list, including a Pulitzer Prize, an Edward R. Murrow Award, and the Sigma Delta Chi Award for climate reporting. David's curiosity and passion for the environment have led him to documentary film, where his work has won still more awards, including a Jackson Wild Award, which is known as the Oscar for Nature Films. Please join me in welcoming our special guests.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, great.
Holy shit, I forgot my laptop.
You didn't realize it was a business meeting. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for bringing us all together. Congratulations to the winners. And it is great to be with you, Gina and Ryan. Anytime I have a public conversation like this about climate change, I try to start by making clear how this issue of climate change is not some distant abstract threat, but one that very much presents a clear and present danger. So before I ask questions, I thought I would start by trying to set the table for a bit with a few facts about climate change. So the most recent reports show that last year was either the second or third hottest year on record since 1850, and that's despite the planet experiencing the cooling La Nina effect. That follows 2024, which was the hottest year on record, and 2023, which had previously set the record for hottest year. The last 11 years have been the hottest 11 years on record. Temperatures in 2024 were so warm that for the first time, the planet exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial times in a calendar year. Scientists have long warned that sustained temperatures above that threshold could unleash catastrophic consequences such as brutal heat waves, torrential storms, massive wildfires, prolonged droughts, and other deadly disasters.
David, you're kind of a bummer here.
I know, I'm sorry. It is
we
not.
Just all kiss our butts goodbye.
It is not the most uplifting issue, but thankfully Gina is here to try to make it even a little bit more depressing.
We were brought in to cool the room down.
Yes. So anyone who has been paying attention knows that these consequences have already come to pass. Last year, the United States suffered more than $100 billion in damage from weather and climate disasters, reaching that level for the 5th time in the past 6 years. And that was without a single hurricane striking U.S. shores. Over the past 5 years, the United States has experienced an average of $23 billion climate and weather disasters. And by comparison, in the 1980s, we had an average of about 3 such costly disasters and nearly 7 in the 1990s. And just one more fact. Last year, as the Trump administration has really began promoting the burning of fossil fuels and coal and has sought to block a range of renewable energy projects, greenhouse gas emissions in the United States increased by 2.4%. And that, as many of you know, is a significant problem because scientists say that if we are not keeping warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, or in order for us to keep emissions to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we need to cut emissions by about 45% by the end of this decade. And unfortunately, and I'll conclude with this, if nothing changes, we are now on a potentially catastrophic path of some 2.7 degrees of warming by the end of this century. And just to be clear about what that means, at 2 degrees of warming, the world's major ice sheets are likely to collapse. Some 400 million more people are likely to suffer from water scarcity. Major cities along the equator could become too hot or humid to live in. And heat waves will kill thousands of people every summer, even in northern latitudes. And I'm going to stop there and not even paint the more dire picture of what 3 degrees Celsius might include. So, sorry for that long preamble.
Do you have any scotch? Because it would really work at this point in time.
Is there any in the house? So, given that gloomy portrait, let's talk about what can be done, especially in the private sector, given the state of affairs in Washington, D.C. So this is a question for you both. We are clearly not on track to meet President Biden's goal of cutting emissions 50% below 2005 levels by 2030. So the question is this: if Democrats regain power in 2028, what might a climate moonshot look like that could make a meaningful effort to really cut emissions and compel the private sector to do more?
Me first?
Gina, go first.
Okay. I don't know. That's a really good answer to the question.
If you don't know the answer, we're in trouble.
Look at David. I think your data was absolutely correct, but in order to maintain my own sanity, I am working hard to understand how change happens, what this administration is doing, what we can do to stop it, and how do we keep our kids and our grandkids safe and with a healthy future, which I still believe is doable. And so in order to address this, I think we have to understand that it's going to have to be an international effort. It cannot be domestic only. We can do what we can do. My focus right now, part of this is doing a lot of work at the state and local level to make sure that the United States can continue to function despite what's happening in the federal government. Because we still can do stuff, we can get excited, we can move forward, we can teach our kids. This is what we have to focus on, while I think we also have to drive home the injustices that we're seeing in the federal government itself. So I think it's all about maintaining our optimism, maintaining our hope, working hard. It has to be clean energy. Fossil fuels is what's going to be the death of our planet, and it's time to change it. We need to look at our international colleagues, band together, get a strategy for moving clean energy forward, do it in a way that lowers cost, that actually gets our families a healthier future. And I think that's doable, but I don't just think it's doable, it's absolutely necessary to do that.
Anything more specific, though, in terms of what policies you could envision that a climate-focused administration would actually introduce to reverse the current trends?
Yeah, I think my experience is with EPA, and to some extent when I worked in the White House. And the only way you can do this is to look at both the benefits of a transition. We're going to have to lower pollution. We're going to have to keep our waterways clean. We're going to have to address plastic pollution. All of these things can be done not just with policies, but by rules and regulations. That's how you take care of this problem. It cannot be done because I want to engage people in some holding hands and singing feelings. This is about rebuilding our government structure in a way that it's supposed to happen. At EPA, we regulated. We looked at what the damage was. If pollution was a damaging problem, you lower the pollution. Woohoo! This can happen. And the thing is, we have all of the technology and strategy we need. It exists. And I think the private sector is a massively exciting opportunity to actually advance with government structures to actually make this change happen. So I don't know what more specific that we need to get, David. We know the technologies that are available. We know they work. We just got to get them out there. And part of this is we got to get investment. And that investment needs to pay off, or else you don't get it.
Ian?
I'd say a couple things. One is, as usual, brilliant, so thank you. I think the intro, while pretty dark and pretty long, I actually will give you a huge compliment here, which is if this were 24 months ago, I'd say, all right, let's speed this thing up. Nobody speaks like that anymore. Yeah. In the last 12 months, nobody has when's the last time you've been a part of a conversation that you grounded yourself in the facts of what we're living through right now? So I think that's number one, the biggest issue that we face. I think, our time on this stage is pretty brief. Our need to move quickly on this issue, even more so. And so let's not screw around anymore, calling things something other than what they are. This administration here in the US has a whole of government attack on climate and the environment, in addition to the attack that they've got on so many other things. We've got 3 years left to deal with this shit. Hopefully in 12 months, we get an outcome in the midterms that at least put the brakes on it a bit. That's how I see the moment right now. So to switch and talk about solutions, I think it's going to take citizens acting in their capacity as citizens, individuals acting as citizens, and engaging in every way possible. It's going to take government stepping up and doing what governments are built to do, solve the biggest problems, leverage the biggest opportunities. That's not going to happen right now. And it's going to take the private sector, use the word regulation, and regulation all of a sudden is a bad word, and externality is a good word. Up is down and down is up. We got to flip the entire script. And businesses need to participate in taking responsibility for their footprint.
We'll come back to that, but this is a similar question, but maybe with a different twist. If either of you happen to be running for president, Gina, I'm not suggesting that, but maybe, or advising a candidate, how would you sell bold climate action to a skeptical public? How would you elevate climate as an issue, and what perhaps campaign slogan might actually work to motivate voters on this issue?
Well, just let me start. And I think one of the challenges that we've always had, and I think at least many of us have recognized this, is that people don't react to an issue they can't get their arms around. We have talked way too much about climate and not enough to give people a sense that climate change, of course, is real, it's happening, but we have to talk about the solution sets. We have to get people engaged and excited about that. I mean, that's why this prize is so cool here. You're talking about things that I never would have believed were possible. So we need to get people excited. And certainly we need people to understand that if we can push clean energy in the way we expected to do it, when the Biden administration moved forward with the Inflation Reduction Act, it was billions and billions of dollars for good reason, because it would pay off in multi-billions and billions of dollars, because we'd be protecting people. We'd be lowering their costs. We'd be making people have homes they can live in and afford to live in. There is I think we have, hit this blockage with the Trump administration that we have to either ignore or get around or blast through. We cannot allow this administration to actually weaken our ability to be Americans again. To act like we care about each other. And the slogan issue is important. If we can get away from technical terms and return to what's good for people and human beings and families.
You often talk about climate change through the prism of public health.
Yes.
And did that work? Was that the right approach?
I think it was better. I think it grounded the issue, because it actually defined the impacts pretty well. What I think we need to do now is define the benefits of the action. That's the key issue.
And Ryan?
I got no sound bites for you. I got a creative team that's much better at this than me, and I'm not running for president. But what I would tell you is that
neither am I. Let's to be very clear about that.
So we got some breaking news. I guess and I understand the nature of the question, but here's what really troubles me. Like, we are living, and I think it starts with Twitter, we're living in this world where you got to convey complex ideas in the most simple form, and I think we've kind of We've stripped the substance out of these things. And so I think to Gina's point, talking about, look, I think climate change is an amorphous concept that people really struggle to react to. I do think one of the things we talk about a lot in protecting natural places, you made the point, if people can't connect to it, then it's not important to them. I think that's spot on. I spent 6 years with Patagonia in Europe. And, you know, Europeans were inspired by the fact that we cared about these things and did this work. But at the end of the day, if we weren't working on issues important to them across the European continent, in their backyards that they could connect to, it was a nice idea. It really didn't matter. I think about, you know, for a long time, we still work to remove dams. But saying that you're anti-dam doesn't kind of flow through the same way as you're pro-free-flowing rivers. So I think coming at it in a positive way is important. But what I really struggle with is the dumbing down of the conversation and trying to cram it into 128 characters or less. This is complicated. This is important. And for us, on behalf of the business sector, there's no business to be done on a dead planet.
Okay, let me ask you, Ryan, a quick question. Patagonia took the unprecedented step of transferring the company's ownership to a trust that is focused on climate and environmental causes. How has that changed the way your company operates? And is this a model that other companies could or should follow?
Yeah, so really quick, just what we did. So 53-year history. We started charging ourselves an earth tax in 1985, codified that in an independent organization called 1% for the Planet in 2002. So understood, we had a responsibility first and foremost to minimize our footprint in everything we do in running the business. No matter what we do, it won't be enough. Therefore, we need to charge ourselves an earth tax. We've given away over the history of that about $240 million to small grassroots environmental organizations around the world. 5 or so years ago, right when I started in this role, Yvon, the founder, and his wife, Melinda, came and said, look, we want to restructure the company, figure out the future of the company in perpetuity, and we want to cash flow the environment in much bigger ways now. So we set up a perpetual purpose trust to make sure the person sitting in my seat doesn't screw it up. And we set up a series of 501c4s, and that's where we give all of our profits every year. So how has it impacted running the business? I tell you that story in that order. Because first we run the business, minimizing our footprint. That's the responsibility. It was, it is, it will always be. And then we give 1% of revenue away to small grassroots organizations, same tomorrow as yesterday. And then we give the profits away, and we do it in that order. So the responsibility about minimizing the footprint, that is central and always will be.
Let me ask you a little bit more of a challenging question. The group Net Tracker Zero has found that the vast majority of corporate pledges to effectively eliminate their emissions lacks credibility. Your company has criticized greenwashing, but Patagonia's emissions have risen by as much as 25% since 2017. How do you ensure, as the CEO of Patagonia, that you are not falling into that trap using bold?
Yeah, well, I think the first piece is the fact that you share that statistic, and that comes from what we call our work in progress report, which the greenhouse gas emission footprint piece is an important piece of it. I think the report's 200 pages, talks about labor, talks about greenhouse gases, talks about materials, talks about waste, talks about a host of things. And we have always prided ourselves on being really transparent. And if we open source eco-innovation to our competitors, we're transparent about the progress that we're making. I think it's more important that we're transparent about the challenges that we're facing. I think that statistic that our greenhouse gas emission footprint has increased 25% since 2017, I couldn't feel worse about that. But those are the facts, and I'm here to own them. Here's what we do about that. 99% of our greenhouse gas emission footprint is from the product that we make. So we have solar panels on facilities and all the rest of it. It is a rounding error of our business. 86% of our total greenhouse gas emission footprint is the materials that compose our product. And so I think about the award here and think about
I was going to ask about that, yeah.
How do all of us continue to optimize it? Because I thought the video did a good job of saying what a waste that this stuff hits the floor. Well, when you understand that 86% of your entire global footprint is that material, whether it goes to the store or the floor, that's the issue. So what we're doing is we've been working for a number of years doing engineering studies with the mills that we work with, all of which are in different parts of the world, mostly in Asia. and figuring out both where their energy comes from and how efficiently it is utilized in their facilities. And so we are now building what we call a carbon insetting model, where we can financially partner with these mills. We are a small percentage of the throughput of any of them, but collectively that's where the footprint is. Create a carbon insetting model where we get them moved to non-coal-based, non-fossil fuel-based energy sources, get them on renewables as quickly as possible and do that at scale. And do it in a way where there is sort of balance sheet like, first of all, it's audited and accredited, and second of all, it becomes in essence an asset so that it is visible and there is, that you can run it against your greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, thank you. Gina, this is a more challenging question for you. The Inflation Reduction Act was President Biden's signature climate achievement, which you share a lot of responsibility for. But by the time President Trump took office, less than $20 billion of more than $50 billion in obligated IRA funding had actually been spent. So knowing that a political shift was possible, why wasn't there greater urgency to actually lock that money up in actual projects that would have been harder to undo?
You know, I don't know at this point how much was left behind, but I do know that there was very little time at the end of an administration to expend all the money. And a lot of the resources were obviously given to a variety of agencies. EPA got a significant amount, but it made no difference because you can't spend that much money in that short a period of time. So even while it was allocated and they were ready to go, when this administration came in, they stopped all of that from happening. And all they did was continue to take back the money to expend on what they wanted to do for fossil fuels and other industries that they were interested in promoting. So you're right, you want to move quickly when you get a lot of money. It was a great idea. Even though we allocated it, it couldn't have been spent, I think, more quickly, given, frankly, spending money in the federal government is not easy.
So there's nothing different that you might do?
I don't know what I would do, David. I mean, really, it's a significant amount of money. You want it, you want to spend it the right way. It takes time to expend the money.
Can I just jump in on that as well? You and I had this conversation over lunch. You know, the business sector, private sector, had a tremendous amount of influence on the fact that Build Back Better got killed and ended up having to become much deeper into Biden's presidency, the Inflation Reduction Act. So if the private sector, including the Business Roundtable, hadn't been so strategically oppositional, you all would have been able to deploy more of that money.
Yeah.
Got it. We have a limited amount of time left, so I wanted to jump to this question. A lot of people are experiencing an intense form of something called climate anxiety. What advice might either of you have for those folks, especially a lot of young people are feeling this? And is there anything that is giving you hope in these dark times?
Well, it can be young people feel anxious, but old people like me do too. Guaranteed. I wake up every morning wondering what shoe is going to drop next from the federal government. So what I try to do is you know, I always try to stay as hopeful and optimistic as I can, because in my experience, change happens slowly until it doesn't, until it runs like crazy. And I think that's what gives me hope. I think we can rebuild quickly. I think we have the stamina in the United States of America to be able to grab our future for ourselves and run with it. I firmly believe that this administration is doing the wrong thing all the time, but that doesn't mean we have to kowtow to it, That's why I'm working with states and local governments. They are doing things. They're getting excited. They're showing the opportunity for the families in America to actually get the kind of benefits that they deserve to get. And clean energy is a startling opportunity. And honestly, most of the industries that do clean energy now don't raise their hands, they don't talk about it, they don't want to be counted because they're afraid of this administration, but they're friggin' moving as fast as humanly possible. And when he wants to stop offshore wind, he goes to the courts, and the courts tell him you can't do it. And so I'm excited about the moment. I'm excited to turn the corner away from this administration. I do not think it's going to take 3 years. Because this administration is causing families everywhere to have higher health care costs. It's taking away their ability to live where they want to live, to do what they want to do, to work the way they want to work. And I think that that's a serious mistake for this administration, and it's one that should give us every ability to turn the corner and to do the kind of work that our country has always been doing, which is the work that benefits our constituencies, that benefits our people and our families. And if that ain't it, then I don't know what we do, because, man, I'm going to stay optimistic. I'm going to stay hopeful. I'm going to look at what we can do and what we can do and what we can do. I'm hanging around with the international community now saying, hello, don't listen to that guy. We got a world here. It's with states and leaders at the local level. And it's young people. Man, our young people, they get it. They're not going to be pushed aside, so we got to fight. Big deal. We've had to fight our whole lives.
Why'd you look past me when you said young people?
You are my young people.
I just added that. That was brilliant. And I would say that, number one, the cure for depression is action. And I think if you're feeling like, and I think everybody that was optimistic about where things were going in Trump 1.0 and into the Biden administration, I think just feels like they've had the wind knocked out of them in the last 12 months or more. Yeah. And I think I understand why. I'm one of those people. You mentioned waking up every morning. I don't even feel like I sleep anymore. And so, like, that's really the weight that we're all carrying. If you're feeling alone, find one other person. You just doubled the size of the group that's ready to get something done, and double it again. It's not that difficult. I do think what's foundationally important is that we continue to speak up in creating the kind of world that we want to create. You describe yourself as an optimist. I'm not. I'm a pragmatist. I'm a realist. But where I look for optimism, I look at the 3 finalists that we just heard from. That's incredibly gives me an incredible amount of energy. I look at just all the shit coming out of Davos this week. There were few things in that moment that were pretty inspiring. I think about Mark Carney calling it like he sees it, laying it out articulately with passion, the moment we're living in. I look at Dario Amodei from Anthropic, who is trying to build a business around a technology, and yet he is the lone voice talking about the negative impacts socially, environmentally, and otherwise with this technology. It's happening. So I don't think you have to look that far. I think you have to look hard to find leaders in moments like this.
The other thing that makes me feel okay is that, we do have opportunities for change now that we've never had before. And change in my lifetime has always started small, and it gets its own momentum. Mm-hmm. And so I'm banking a lot on young people. Yeah. I'm banking a lot on people that I meet every day. I'm banking a lot on people internationally who are looking at us and saying, you're crazy, but at least you're doing something. Yeah. Right? And so I think that's what gives me hope. I don't think anything stands still. We just have to move in the correct direction.
For all of those people who are feeling demoralized at the moment, any pep talk that you might offer, any specific kinds of action that either of you can envision that folks in this room investors, other people in this country, what action can they take at this time that might make a meaningful difference to address climate change?
I mean, I'll say, I think it's a pretty simple formula, and it's one we talk about a lot. Think about 3 overlapping circles in the center point. It's what gives you joy, what does the world need, and what are you good at? And where that overlap is, do that thing. So if you're in investing, I mean, one thing you can do, as small as it may sound, start talking about this stuff again like it was 2024, not like it's 2026. If you're in the media, same statement. If you're in business, understand your footprint, understand your supply chain, drive changes. Don't overlook the power. I mean, think about the collective power of the 300 or so people, privileged as we are in this room. Imagine if every one of us went home tonight and said, I'm going to do one more thing this week. I'm going to find one more person to engage in that work than I was planning to otherwise. Like, we can move these mountains. But none of this is going to happen if we're apathetic, if we're pessimistic. I've got 2 young kids. I renounce the right to be pessimistic, regardless of how I see it. And I think we've all just got to show up every day with that mentality and that bias towards action.
So we have received a number of questions from the audience, and let me just ask one or a version of it. The current administration has positioned climate change as a hoax.
Yes.
And the twist of the question is, we all know people, maybe less so in Boston, but we might have a crazy uncle. We might know folks who believe that climate change is a hoax perpetrated by liberals who want to tax them. How do you talk to those folks? What do you say, and how much do facts actually make a difference in a conversation like that?
Well, I try to explain that science isn't a belief system. It's science. You know, give them enough information as you can. But I reject the idea that so many people don't believe in climate change. I don't believe in that. I think people do understand that the climate is changing. I think people do understand that we have to do something about it. I don't find a lot of folks questioning that issue in particular. It's just, how do we get things done? And so I'm pretty confident that most people will not just recognize that climate change is real, but I think it would be a welcome change if we could hand them the range of policies and practices and technologies that they could rely on. And that's what we have to do. We have to recognize that it's difficult, and sure, there's always going to be climate deniers. But for crying out loud, there's people that still think it's a flat Earth. Go hang out with them.
Yeah, I'd just add quickly, I literally don't know a single person who doesn't believe climate change is real. You know, there's bots and all kinds of other bullshit on the internet and social media that seems to perpetuate this thesis that that's true. I know a lot of people who don't see it as a top 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 issue in their lives. And I'm sympathetic to that. I understand that. There's a lot of people who are working really hard to deal with things that are much more immediately in front of them and within their span of control. And I think there's a really big difference between the two.
But the facts are alarming, as I spelled out at the beginning. How do you speak to folks to raise that level of urgency without making these alarming facts make you seem like an alarmist?
Do you have an answer to that?
The house is on fire. You sound the alarm. I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, you can't sugarcoat it. I mean, you need to tell people, I mean, that we have to move, and we have to move quickly. But I don't know how to get a shortcut to that. You just got to work with people. That's why, you know, and I know I'm a bit of a broken record here. But if you look at what you already can do to reduce carbon emissions, already, it's so much cheaper. The thing that this administration is effectively trying to do is to tell you that fossil fuels is the answer to every friggin' question that arises, right? That's what they're trying to do. We have to reject that, and we have to just talk to normal human beings about the opportunities of today. Because people run away if you sit around and talk to them about climate change too long, because they feel discouraged. You can't fix it. It's too big. Is it real? Will it ever go away? Can you? You know, that's the kind of thing that they start dwelling on. And I dwell on it. I don't know how to fix this. I'm not even convinced that you know what it's going to be 25 years from now. Could be worse, could be better. I have no clue. But what I know is that the human spirit is basically looking at these issues, and people are getting engaged in understanding about what we do when that arises. But right now, we're in a hole. We're being captured by the fossil fuel industry in the United States of America. It's hugely embarrassing. I mean, I was just reading a guy from, I'm going to Australia, leaving tomorrow, hopefully, if the snow doesn't hold me here. I'm going to Australia to do some visits with folks there and talk about what the U.S. is doing. But I bring that up because I feel like there was this article that a guy that's running a big lithium mine has said that they are now going to be carbon neutral. They're gonna figure it out. This is a guy in Australia in the middle of, really, he lives in the area in the middle of nowhere. These people understand the challenge. They live in the natural world. That's one thing we haven't talked about at all, is the damages that climate has to the natural world and the living, breathing human, animals that depend on it. And so I think it's just really important for us to keep talking to one another, to keep understanding, to talk about this in a way that allows people some freedom to not go home at night and have a shot of whiskey and go to bed and try to get up in the morning. That can't be how we behave.
It sounds pretty good right now.
It does, actually. As long as it's Scotch. I don't like rye.
Yeah.
Let me ask one more question from the audience. This is from someone named Julia. As an investor strictly focused on impact, the food and agriculture sector seems to be one of the most critical areas to support to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It is among the largest contributors of greenhouse gas emissions. Is there any other category, if you were an investor trying to have an impact, where you might put your money to try to have the most impact to address these issues?
I think cement, building materials, absolutely one of the biggest. I think the fashion and apparel space.
We have several companies right here in Massachusetts that are creating this green kind of cement that has fewer emissions.
Yep. No, I think it's foundationally important. I think transportation is another example of some really big complex problems there. I mean, it's interesting. I don't want to get into a super deep swirl on AI, but there's this interesting paradox. Like Anthropic's Claude's code is now 90% written by Claude. I think about that and applying AI to solving some of our big climate and environmental challenges. On the one hand, I actually am quite convinced that machine learning is going to unlock cures for cancers that are not curable today and other currently incurable diseases. I think it can do the same in the climate and ecological space. There's a difference between what something can do and what it will do. The money is in creating altered images and other bullshit we don't need. And yet, there's the difference between the probable and the possible. And we seem to move towards the probable, that race to the bottom thinking, time and time again. I listened to what Gina said before, that the solutions to the environmental crisis are here. That inspires the hell out of me. The reality is the solutions to alleviating poverty and hunger have been here for decades, and we just haven't demonstrated the consistent will to use it. And so I think therein lies the challenge.
On AI, Gina, do you worry that the actual impact of all of these data centers that we're building and the impact on water supply and energy use is worth all of that build out? Or do you worry that that build out, that all of this AI talk about solving climate change could be hype compared to what the impact is of all these centers?
Yes and yes. I do worry a lot about AI. I mean, it is draining the system, not just how we produce energy, but it can be very damaging on water quality, very damaging on heat and the stress that it's posing. So it's, but I don't think you're going to turn back. I think we need to, it needs to be regulated.
Yeah, I think about AI like social media. Let's not let the technology outpace the regulation.
Yeah.
But to try to end, and we're reaching the conclusion of our conversation here, to end on a more warm and fuzzy note, if you had to put your dollars into one area that would actually make an impact, what would you suggest that folks with resources might actually do to make a meaningful investment in addressing climate change?
Yeah, I'll offer. I'm not going to give you an answer. I'm going to answer my own question, which is, instead of what would I do if I were an investor, I'll answer a slightly different question: is what do I think each of us can do as humans? I'm in the business of selling clothes and equipment. I think it is incredibly important that when you are buying things, including clothes and equipment, think about quality, buy what you need, keep it in use as long as possible. See yourself as an owner, not as a consumer. When you buy a car and the car needs service, you service it. When you buy a car and it has an issue, you fix it. Somehow we've trained ourselves in so many places, including the space that I represent. The zipper broke, I'll pitch it and get another. That stuff does not go to the benefit of people who need it in other parts of the world. So what can we all do in addition to engaging in our role as citizens? We can just make smarter buying decisions and see ourselves as stewards and owners of the things we purchase.
It was that little reuse and recycle thing we always used to talk about. It's exactly right. I'm excited about a lot of the new technologies that are out there, but even ones that are not exciting, they're steady and they're cheap. Really, it's kind of amazing when you have an administration that doesn't want to save people money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of weird. So I think solar and wind are doing extraordinarily well. I think heat pumps are going to be really big. So there's all kinds of technology
Nuclear
choices
fusion
now. Yeah. Why not?
Why not?
So I'm pumped by all those things that actually, technologies that actually exist that will, I think over time, have to win out. I just don't think the fossil industry can continue to rely on having a Trump person around to be their protector and defender.
It sounds like you're not a big fan of big, beautiful coal.
It is, every coal has its place. It belongs under the ground somewhere. Keep it there, don't burn it, don't look at it, don't give it a kiss. Just goodbye, right?
That sounds like a good note to end on. Thank you, Gina. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you all for coming out on a frigid night. Thank you so much to the JFK Center, the library.
David, thank you for being a great moderator and for all the work you've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gina, thank you.
That was awesome. You are great. David is such a good guy.
Thank you.